When a society begins to confuse the glow of numbers with the warmth of real wealth, when people stare at balances that grow while the shelves behind them quietly empty, and when governments celebrate expansion that exists only on screens, that is the moment when debt starts to forget its purpose and value begins to remember what it really is. Every empire builds its comfort on promises: a bond, a mortgage, a treasury bill, a student loan. Different names for the same idea: tomorrow will arrive, and tomorrow will pay. Yet history has a habit of reminding us that tomorrow sometimes refuses to cooperate. The paper holds ink, but it cannot hold wheat. The digits rise, but they cannot fuel a truck. Debt is not evil, it is a bridge across time. The trouble begins when the bridge grows faster than the land it connects. Across centuries, this story repeats with different uniforms. In one era, it is a king shaving his coins to fund a war. In another, a central bank buying its own promises to keep the illusion alive. The labels change: quantitative easing, deficit spending, emergency relief, but the rhythm stays ancient. Expansion first, denial next, justification later, collapse at the end. People rarely notice the shift in real time. They still receive paychecks, still buy coffee, still scroll through headlines. The decay starts quietly, in the numbers themselves. When interest rates fall below inflation, when credit becomes so cheap that saving feels like punishment, the language of value starts to mutate. House prices soar, stock charts rise, luxury goods multiply, and the crowd believes prosperity has arrived. In truth, what has arrived is leverage disguised as growth. It feels rich because it borrows tomorrow's demand to feed today's celebration. And as long as debt keeps rolling, the illusion holds. But illusions have costs. Each borrowed dollar claims a slice of future labor. Each deficit check assumes future taxes. Each bailout rewrites fairness by taking from those who saved to rescue those who spent. Slowly, the moral fabric that debt once wove, trust, accountability, restraint, begins to tear. The saver turns cynical, the investor turns speculative, and the citizen turns dependent on policies he cannot control. You can see the signs long before the headlines call it a crisis. Debts grow faster than income. Politicians call that stimulus. Banks call it liquidity. Families call it affordable credit. Then prices jump, supply chains thin, and suddenly the same paycheck buys less. The official explanation: temporary. The real cause: confidence slipping. When the belief that a promise will be honored begins to fade, the currency itself becomes a rumor, and when that rumor spreads far enough, debt becomes worthless, not because the paper vanished, but because trust did. History gives us proof. In Weimar Germany, wages doubled by noon while bread tripled by evening. In Argentina, savings evaporated 3 times in a single generation. In Zimbabwe, banknotes once printed with 1,000,000,000 zeros could not buy a bus ticket. In each case, debt did not explode, it dissolved. Paper remained, but the faith that gave it life was gone. What survives such evaporation is always the same pattern: wearing local clothes. Real goods, real skills, real trust. The farmer still trades eggs, the mechanic still repairs trucks, the baker still bakes because hunger ignores macroeconomics. When the map of finance burns, the terrain of necessity remains untouched. People barter, redenominate, invent parallel rails, and life continues in smaller, harder, truer units. The first step to understanding survival in a collapsing paper world is to separate wealth from representation. Wealth is food, fuel, shelter, time, and the capacity to act. Representation is the receipt that says you deserve those things. In stable times, the two are interchangeable. In unstable times, the receipt melts first. That is why the richest person in a hyperinflation may also be the hungriest. His claims are vast, but his reach is gone. None of this is theoretical. The world runs on a total debt that now exceeds global output many times over. Most of it cannot be repaid in real terms. It can only be rolled, diluted, or forgotten. The question, what survives when debt becomes worthless, is not poetic, it is practical. It is asking, what parts of life still hold value when our financial operating system resets? And the first answer, the foundation of all others, is production, the ability to make, to repair, to grow, to serve a tangible need. When debt collapses, every hierarchy of wealth reorders itself around production. Paper privilege loses rank. The man who can fix a generator becomes more valuable than the man who can trade derivatives. The woman who knows how to preserve food becomes richer than the speculator who once owned 10 condos. Reality, silent for years, suddenly enforces its own accounting. We are not at that point yet, but cycles do not need permission to turn. Every financial order begins with discovery, grows with leverage, matures with complacency, and ends with revelation. We are somewhere between complacency and revelation. You can already feel the floor creak. The next phase is not about predicting collapse, it is about remembering the order that survives collapse. In the next segment, we will look directly at that order, the hierarchy of endurance that reveals what truly holds value when paper fails, and how ordinary people, not governments or banks, quietly keep civilization running while the official system rewrites its numbers. When the illusion collapses, when the lights of digital wealth flicker out one by one, and when the promises that once felt infinite begin to trade at zero, a strange clarity returns to the world. A quiet reordering where power flows back to those who hold the things that actually keep life moving. The survivors of monetary decay are not lucky, they are anchored. Every cycle of broken credit reveals the same hierarchy, no matter the century or the flag. At the top are productive assets, machines, tools, land, and systems that keep creating without needing permission. Beneath them stand cash flows, businesses, and skills that generate income day by day. Below that lies trust, the invisible fabric that allows trade when banks and states lose coherence. And at the bottom, supporting all else, is character, because when paper collapses, reputation becomes collateral. Let's start from the peak of the pyramid, production. Real production does not depend on belief, it depends on physics, soil, and sweat. A field that grows grain, a workshop that repairs engines, a microgrid that powers homes. These assets remain useful when metrics die. They are not glamorous, but they are elemental. In every major crisis, from the Soviet breakup to modern currency implosions, people with access to production never starved. They bartered, they traded, they adjusted prices, but their output stayed valuable. Debt may vanish, but hunger never defaults. Next come cash flows, the beating heart of resilience. A bakery that sells daily, a coder who freelances for global clients, a transport company with flexible pricing. All of these survive because they bridge the gap between need and supply in real time. They don't depend on old debts clearing. They earn new income every sunrise. The secret is adaptability, short contracts, multiple payment options, and the willingness to reprice when costs shift. The person who can keep selling into chaos outlasts the investor waiting for order to return. Below cash flows is the invisible capital of trust. When currencies fracture, trust becomes a shadow bank that never sleeps. A friend who believes your word will lend grain when ATMs are empty. A local supplier who knows your consistency will extend credit when spreadsheets say no. Communities rediscover what modern finance buried. Reputation is liquidity. Each handshake is a private loan with no interest but enormous value. Those who abused trust during easy times, those who delayed payments, broke small promises, or chased short-term gains, find themselves isolated when paper fails. The next layer is skills, the portable factories inside human hands. The ability to weld, fix plumbing, program, teach, farm, or manage logistics is wealth that cannot be confiscated or devalued. In collapsing systems, paper resumes burn, but competence trades at a premium. You can see this in every nation that has faced currency ruin. While the unskilled wait for aid, the skilled rewrite their prices daily and keep living. Debt may destroy savings, but it cannot erase skill. And beneath all layers lies character, the single survivor that history never inflates or defaults. When institutions wobble, people instinctively search for those who are calm, fair, and reliable. The man who keeps his word in chaos becomes more valuable than any banker in calm. The woman who leads with reason instead of panic becomes the cornerstone of new order. In this way, character transforms into an economic asset. It earns trust, attracts allies, and stabilizes groups that would otherwise dissolve. If you map these survivors onto a real crisis, the logic becomes visible. In Argentina's currency freezes, small shops that stocked goods and allowed local IOUs thrived. During hyperinflation in Yugoslavia, families with gardens and relatives abroad kept value through food and remittances. After Greece's debt restructuring, businesses with foreign clients adapted first. They invoiced in euros while paying local costs in cheaper currency. Every time it wasn't wealth that ensured survival, it was structure, production, flow, trust, and skill aligned. This hierarchy also explains why debt collapses hurt the leveraged elite more than the modest worker. The man who built his fortune on complex credit finds himself chained to liabilities that now inflate faster than his assets. The craftsman with a small shop, low debt, and daily income feels pain but keeps moving. Simplicity, once mocked as inefficiency, becomes power. There's another truth hidden in this order. Mobility matters. A portable skill, a remote cash flow, or an asset that serves multiple markets is worth more than a fortress built on one fragile system. In an era where capital controls, rate changes, and digital surveillance rise together, freedom of movement, physical and financial, is not luxury, it is survival insurance. The deeper lesson is that collapse doesn't destroy value, it merely reassigns it. Paper loses command, and matter regains it. The hierarchy of the real restores natural ranking, the producer above the speculator, the honest above the clever, the doer above the talker. It is not moral poetry, it is arithmetic enforced by scarcity. And while many fear this reordering, it also cleans the lens. It reminds us that wealth was never in digits, it was the capacity to meet needs. When debt becomes worthless, the hierarchy of the real quietly takes control, rewarding competence, courage, and community while punishing dependence, arrogance, and excess leverage. In the final segment, we'll strip this down to a practical frame, a short map of principles and preparation. Because knowing what survives is only half the work, the real question is how to build it before the paper burns. When the system that once measured your worth in numbers begins to devour itself, when every promise you trusted seems to wobble on its foundations, and when the clever voices that once told you this time is different suddenly go quiet, survival no longer belongs to those who predict the future. It belongs to those who prepare for it. Preparation is not paranoia, it is clarity in motion. The goal is not to escape the world, but to function when its symbols break. The people who navigate debt collapse successfully do not need forecasts. They need structure. And that structure begins with 4 layers of resilience: real value, adaptive flow, multiple rails, and inner stability. Real value means owning or controlling something that feeds, shelters, or powers life. It can be a small farm plot, a repair shop, a 3D printer, a delivery van, a water system, or even a set of tools that others depend on. These are not romantic survival items. They are income engines that keep turning when the abstract economy stops. The trick is to prefer function over fashion. One working generator is worth more than a dozen unused gadgets. A skill that can produce output next week is worth more than a certificate that once impressed employers. When debt collapses, it is function, not prestige, that defines the new upper class. The second layer, adaptive flow, is the art of staying liquid while everything else freezes. Cash is still king, but only if it keeps buying what you need. That means spreading your liquidity across time, currency, and access. Keep short-term reserves in the form people trust. Stronger currency, physical cash, or assets that sell quickly. Keep mid-term reserves in productive inventory, items that either earn or save money. And keep long-term reserves in something outside the paper system: precious metals, foreign accounts, or tools that can move across borders. The goal isn't hoarding, it's continuity. You're not hiding from collapse, you're staying operational through it. Then comes multiple rails, the ability to trade, earn, and communicate through more than one channel. If your income depends on one bank, one platform, or one jurisdiction, you are a hostage. Build redundancy. Have 2 payment methods, 2 markets, 2 suppliers. If you work online, mirror your presence across different platforms. If you sell goods, maintain a direct local circle that doesn't rely on intermediaries. When the official rail slows, the parallel one will keep you moving. The businesses that survived the last century's collapses weren't the biggest. They were the ones with the most alternative paths to trade. The fourth and final layer is inner stability, a kind of quiet wealth that doesn't show on a balance sheet. When systems fail, fear becomes the new inflation. It multiplies faster than prices. People who cannot think clearly make desperate trades. They sell essentials for comfort and waste calm on panic. That's where the character earns compound returns. Calm is a currency. It keeps your judgment intact while others lose theirs. The man who can stay rational under pressure can buy half a country's assets for pennies once the fog lifts. But this only happens when he protects his own clarity first. Sleep, health, discipline, faith, order. None of this demands wealth. It demands awareness. You can start anywhere. Audit your dependence. How many of your needs depend on paper promises? Then begin replacing one link at a time. Grow something. Fix something. Learn something that feeds others. Save small, often. Shorten commitments. Strengthen trust. Each act reduces fragility and adds to what truly survives. Understand also that governments will not announce collapse. They will manage it. They will rename losses as adjustments, defaults as restructurings, and devaluations as rebalancing. The message will always sound calm, because panic breaks systems faster than debt ever could. Don't wait for the declaration. Read the signs. When the unit of account weakens, and rules start to shift faster than earnings, that's your signal to pivot, not in fear, but in readiness. In the end, collapse is not an ending, it is a transfer. The illusion passes, but the real remains. Debt becomes worthless, but energy, skill, and trust stay priceless. The ones who survive are not magicians, they are custodians of reality. They understand that civilizations rise and fall on their ability to produce, adapt, and stay honest with what money really measures: usefulness. So as you watch the next financial storm unfold, remember this: what survives is always the same: the tools in your hands, the clarity in your mind, the integrity in your word, and the community that believes in both. Build those before the headlines tell you they matter, because by then it's too late to start. If you found value in this reflection, share it with someone who still believes the numbers are the truth. Subscribe if you want to keep learning how money, power, and psychology shape the hidden order of our world. And if you've already subscribed, thank you. You are part of the small group that refuses to stay asleep while the system rewrites reality.